Okay, I was muted. Hi everyone, good morning, good evening. It depends on where you are. I'm Alona and I'll be moderating today's webinar. And I want to make sure that you can hear me, you can see me. So please type pluses in the chat if you can. I'm waiting a few minutes when you are typing the pluses. And actually, where we are. We are joining the webinar with Brian Benz, and today's topic is about using an AI to build an AI Java apps. Okay, perfect. We can see your pluses. It means that you can hear us and you can see us. It's perfect. Actually, if you words before the webinar, due to technical issues during the DevOps conference, we've organized this live session with our brilliant speaker and few notes for our participants. First of all, this session will be recorded, so you can watch it when it's comfortable for you. And to be honest, we encourage you to stay engaged and you can ask everything what you want. Because today's session will be really very interesting. And I'm happy, really, I'm excited to introduce our speaker. Brian, actually, we can see you, we can hear you right now, and few words about you and about your experience. Actually, Brian is a cloud advocate at Microsoft, helping developers make the most of Azure. And before joining Microsoft, he held roles as a solution architect, consultant, developer, author, presenter at IBM, Deloitte, and other well-known companies. We are really happy to see you. And how are you actually?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for asking. Yes, great to be here. Sorry to hear about the broadcast issues last time, but I actually got a little bit of content. You know how you run through the presentation, and then you actually do it live, and you think of things that you could show next time. So I actually have a couple of things to add to this one. Time permitting, towards the end of the session as well. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us. Now we can see and hear you. We can see your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Thanks. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to be busy presenting, but I'll try and check the chat when I can. Most of this is going to be, I'm going to show some code samples. I've also got some slides I want to show you as well. That's just going to help organize things, but mostly it's going to be demos to basically get across the topics I want to talk to you about. We're going to talk about AI and building AI applications using Azure OpenAI and GitHub Copilot today. For those of you who aren't familiar, GitHub Copilot is a fairly new thing. I think it's been around about a year. Originally it was just this really amazing type ahead where you could actually create something like you could, in the case of Java, you could do something like public class circumference of a circle, and it would write a class for you that does that. And it would suggest a class, and then you would just accept it. And, if it worked for your use, you could do that. Well, Copilot has actually evolved quite a bit since then. And just recently, in fact, as of DevOps Ukraine's original date, GitHub Copilot Chat was made public. The beta version is made public to everyone who has access to GitHub Copilot. And you can download it and you can play around with it. And I'm going to show you some examples of what you can do with that chat. So not only do you have Copilot now, you have a second extension called Copilot Chat, which does some cool stuff. All right. Let me get this slide going. Here we go. So, I very carefully worded what I said. You have access to Copilot because most people assume that if you're using Copilot, you need to use Visual Studio Code. And yes, that's a great way to use it, but there are other ways as well. You can use GitHub Code Spaces. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to show you in a little bit. You can use Visual Studio. You can also use JetBrains IDEs, which is highly relevant for Java developers. So IntelliJ IDEA has a extension that you can use to access Copilot and Copilot Chat. So check that out. Also NeoVim for those of you who use that. All right, so what exactly is Copilot? Well, basically, GitHub has access to a lot of public code. So people have chosen to make the code public, and based on the licensing that they have inside their repos, you can access that code. And what Copilot has done is used that code as a base to generate responses that are relevant to folks' queries. So the first thing that happens is it collects context on the information that you're working with right now in one of those IDEs that I showed you just a second ago, including Visual Studio, NeoVim, VS Code, JetBrains, IntelliJ IDE. And then it uses Copilot to go out and get this OpenAI codex information. So it goes out to the OpenAI codex. It figures out what the relevant information is through prompt engineering. So behind the scenes, it engineers some prompts for you. You don't have to worry about that. And then it actually brings back some suggestions for your code. And it does more than just suggestions now. It can actually fix your code as well. And I'm going to show you a demo of that with the new chat features. So CoPilot Chat. What does it know? When you're working with Visual Studio Code, it knows file names. It knows which files are open. It knows where the cursor is, and it knows things that are selected. So if I go into Visual Studio Code here, here's an example. So it knows anything that's open up here, open tabs. It also knows file names over here, even if they're not open. It also knows where my cursor is, if I click here or here. And it also knows if I selected some code. So that's basically the context awareness that GitHub has, or sorry, the GitHub Copilot has when it's doing queries back to the OpenAI codex to get more information about what you want. All right, so that's basically what you've got. So GitHub Copilot, it has inline completions. I mentioned before, so you can do things like, I could say public class area of a circle. I hope this works. One thing that I got to say is it does, sometimes it can be a little capricious. Is it going to do it? No. Okay. No, area of a circle. No, okay. Wait. No, it's because I don't know how to type. Okay. No, still not going to do it. All right. Anyway, that's a bad example, but normally you can do that. And what it would do is it fill in the information that you want. But I'm going to show you some other cool stuff that's context aware, and you actually trigger it. So that's kind of cool as well. Oh, look at this. It actually does automatically a comment here. If you notice, I didn't actually do anything. But I just hit the tab and it says returns a string based on the beta feature flag. So it's automatically documenting this down here. I didn't ask it to do that. It's just sort of automatically documented. And that's one thing you'll find about Copilot. It's a good and a bad thing. Sometimes it can be downright annoying. It does things. If you ask the exact same thing in the exact same context, you may or may not get the same results. So I'll show you that when it comes to tests. That's the part that I have the most challenges with. But there are some amazing things that are going to help your productivity as well. So I'll see what happens. All right. So much for that demo, but it does do the autocomplete. It really does. But I guess I didn't give it a challenging enough request at that particular time. But you can also do Control-Command-Enter to get a list of suggestions. Let's try that. Actually, I didn't do that. So let's do that here. Maybe I'm just putting this in the wrong place, probably. No, I can put it here. That's all right. Public class area of a circle. Yeah, there we go. See, that's what I'm talking about. The AI, and I can just hit a tab and it accepts it. So it's actually going to return an area of a circle here. I have no idea. I'm going to assume this is correct. But that's what I was telling you about AI. Sometimes it can be a little bit capricious, and you really don't know what you're going to get. And so it makes live demos fun, that's for sure. But as you can see, I just tried this again, and I used those keystroke command combinations, and it did actually give me the code I needed that time. So that's good. That's kind of cool. And if I want to document that, I can just hit tab and it'll do that as well. So there's different options as well. This is new. So control command enter to get a list of suggestions. Sometimes you don't want the first suggestion that comes up, and that can be really annoying if you just know the code is wrong. And so you can go control or command if you're on Mac, enter to get a list of those suggestions. Also, option and the bracket to navigate possible suggestions. So it might give you 5 different suggestions, and it'll give you a list, and you can just navigate through those, and then control command and the angle bracket to accept word by word as well. So you can accept the example you want, but only the pieces you want as well. And then you hit tab to accept the suggestions. So those are new features. Those are kind of cool. The inline completions have always been there, but these new options for choosing different solutions based on your request is new. All right, and then CoPilot Chat. So now you have a inline chat. So if I go here, let's just close this up. I can hit tab and I can accept that that documentation, but I'm just going to skip it for now. If I go up here and I just hit Control I can say, what does this code do? And it's actually going to look it up, and it's going to find this code defines the constructor for hello world features class. It takes a feature manager instance as a parameter, adds it to the feature manager of the class. So, and you can view this in chat. So it's going to bring you over to a chat window here, and you can ask more questions if you want. Is this the best way to do this? So now this is always, let me say a little bit about experience here. This is a good place to bring up a good point. So I've heard in the press that they're saying, oh, this is going to replace junior developers. I don't know about that. Or sorry, it's going to replace senior developers because everyone's going to be able to write code quickly. I think it might more, maybe that's because I'm a senior developer, but I think it's going to replace more junior developers because you need to know what the code does. And I mentioned before the code completion and or the results that you get back from Copilot can be capricious. And maybe that's just the current state, and in the future it's going to be better. But for now, it really helps to know how the code works in the first place. And maybe you just don't remember the syntax or the class names or all the things the things that don't need to really clutter up your mind to write the code. And in that sense, it's very helpful. So it'll give you suggestions. And if you're an experienced programmer, you can look at it and go, I know right away by looking at this is incorrect. It's just not going to work for what I need and what I want. So I have to figure out a better way to ask for it or put my context in better context or whatever you need to do to get a better prompt. So for junior developers, they might be looking at that and they might have no clue if the code is good or bad. And they might actually, I could see situations where you can write a really complex code base and maybe it's all based on something that's really a poor choice and it ends up not performing well or being full of bugs or something like that. So you really do need that experience to be able to tell what's the best thing to do. So I said, is this the best way to do this, for example? And it says, I'm sorry, could you provide more context? So fair enough. And so it's asking me if I want to ask some best languages, but actually, this is a good example. Over here, it doesn't have the context from here. So that's something that needs to be worked on. So when I hit Control I, it popped up this chat and it knows I've selected it here. But once I moved over here, that seems to have lost the context. So that's a little bit of a bug too. Anyway, things that need work. It's not always good, but it is. I mean, I've been working with this for a while now, and it's incredibly helpful and productive. And one of the things I find it's really helpful for is, for example, not necessarily, say you're a seasoned Java developer, but you need to deploy something to Kubernetes and you need to build a deployment manifest in YAML. You might not be all that good at doing that, but you can actually get some expertise from that. You can say, you can point it at a container in Docker Hub and you can say, how would I deploy this to Kubernetes? And it will tell you step by step how to deploy it. And it'll give you a manifest that probably will work. You might have to try a couple iterations of it, but it'll actually work. That's a massive time saver. If you don't know much about Kubernetes manifests, that's going to save you, I don't know, hours or days or weeks. Also, I had a thing, just this a real world example. I had a bash script. I'm pretty good with bash. I've been working with it for about 15 years. And it was a pretty complex bash script and I needed a PowerShell version. So I just went into CoPilot Chat and I said, can you copy and change this, create a version of this in PowerShell? And it did. It actually created it, generated it, and it ran the first time. So that's the kind of thing that's really, really helpful and useful for this kind of chat and this kind of context as well. All right. And then you can just close that as you go on. Say cancel. And so that's the command inline chat as well. So that's kind of cool. All right, fix. This is my favorite feature, and it works pretty much every time if there's an obvious bug. So let me show you an example here. Over here where I hit Control-I, and I said, what does this code do? Well, I don't actually need to do that. I can select this code, and I could just say, I'm going to do explain later. Let me break this first, and then so feature manager. There, I do this all the time. Feature manger. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to figure out why it's not working. So let's go here and let's just say Control-I/fix. This is lazy programming at its pinnacle. So it's going to go and it's going to figure out what needs to be done. There you go. It just put it in there. It didn't even tell me what's wrong. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it says, here's what you did. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so it does do this. Sometimes it gives you like a paragraph that explains what it fixed, and sometimes it just gives you this change to tell you what it changed, and then you can accept it. And so now you have working code again. So that's a silly little example, but sometimes you just get that variable name where you've got a uppercase somewhere where you shouldn't, or something really weird's going on. It's not being caught by the actual IDE you're using, but it is getting caught by the compiler, and you just don't know what the heck's going on. So that's kind of a nice, quick, easy, lazy fix. Lazy is the good way to go sometimes. So that's very, very cool stuff. You can just say fix. Other things you could do. So Control-I. We got doc, explain, fix, and test. And by the way, these are even context sensitive to where you are right now. So if I go over here and I hit the slash, I got more. So I can go help, and that says learns how to use CoPilot. I can write tests, simplify, fix, explain, the API that you want to use, the VS Code examples, create a workspace, or clear. Clear is one I use all the time. So because it gets a little bit wordy over here sometimes, and you sort of lose the context to what you're working on. All right. So that's fixed. The other one that's nice is doc. So I showed you the autocomplete before, where it actually just automatically, let's clear this out. You notice there's no way to sort of clear that out right now without just selecting some more code. So here's a doc right here for the hello world class, but there's nothing here for get mapping. So I can go here and I can say doc, whoops, hold on. Control-I/doc. And what it's going to do is it's going to add a little document. So it just says up here, this message retrieves the beta feature flag and returns a message indicating whether the feature is enabled or disabled. Return is a string. and it tells you whether the beta feature flag is enabled or disabled. So that's kind of useful. Very nice, quick, easy thing. And you could just say accept. And did it change this as well? Oh, it's just getting rid of this. So it's just getting rid of the my own code that I put in here before. So I can do that. There you go. So that'll work. So that's nice. Gives you like a little quick wordy documentation that you probably don't have time to do. I certainly don't usually. It's kind of nice. And you can do that for a whole file. You can just select the whole thing and it'll add the docs. Tests. This is the one that I have the biggest issue with. The tests that it generated for me were not useful tests. So you can go back up here. I'm going to just save this. Okay. So if I go up here, and in this case, I'll just do over here in the context window, tests. And what it'll do is it'll actually generate a class for me. And this is for the whole thing. And first of all, it generates a different test every time. And I haven't found the tests actually do much of anything. This test just runs the code and basically tells you what the code would tell you. And this one, same thing. So, I mean, it's good in a way, but it's not necessarily useful. I'm not sure what value a lot of these tests add. I think in the future, this is going to be a better feature. But, and by the way, if I run this twice, it's going to give me it's going to give me multiple. It's going to give me another result. So that's kind of an interesting thing as well. I think in the future, that'll be cool. I've already got some built-in Spring Boot tests, most of us do when we generate Spring Boot applications. So I don't necessarily need those, but it is useful, and it'll probably be useful in the future. And or if I'm building a pretty complex app that maybe needs some web tests in the front end and things like that, it'll be there as well. So that's kind of cool. So that's tests and code spaces. So I mentioned code spaces. If you don't know what that is, so Visual Studio Code, for those of you who might not know what that is, that's what I've been using here. I mentioned that it runs on IntelliJ IDEA, NeoVim, and Visual Studio as well. But Visual Studio Code and IntelliJ IDEA are really the ones that you need to know about for Java. So if I don't have access to Visual Studio Code, even though it's a free download, and I might not have a machine, or you might have a large corporation or a government that doesn't allow you to install new software, you can use code spaces. So let's go in and check that out. I'm going to go into my browser here. And this is my repo. This is the same repo I was working on locally, but it's out on GitHub at Benz Spring Boot feature flags. I can go to code. You can do the local clone. You can also do code spaces. So what is code spaces? Let's go ahead and create one. And I'll show you what it is. There's a whole this is all a topic by itself. There's ways to pre-configure the code spaces and set them up and do all kinds of things. But what this does basically, when I say create a code space, it's creating a new container using using a virtual machine on Azure called a hosted runner, which is included in the service. It creates a container on that virtual machine, and it fires up an online version of Visual Studio Code. And it actually checks for extensions. So it asks me if I want to install the extension pack for Java. It's installing it right now. So that's going to help me with Java when I work with this. And I'll show you what that does in a second. But the reason why I wanted to show you the code spaces is just because it's very cool, but also, so there, the extension for Java is done. So we still have main Java. Hello World features was the code I was looking at. So you have most of the features you had before. Red Hat wants some help. Let's do it because we're gonna nuke this code space anyway. The nice thing about this is in a browser, and I can save this in the browser. I can go into another browser, and if I'm logged into my GitHub account, it will still be there, and I can open the container again. So this is not accessing the code in my GitHub repo directly. This is accessing a clone of it. So it started a VM, it created a container, it placed my code in a clone on the container. And if I want to actually send this code back, I actually have to push it. So I have to push it back. And that helps if there's multiple developers working on this. And the other nice thing about this is you can predefine images and containers and extensions that are used with this particular code space image. And the advantage of that is you can make it easier for folks to work on this. So you saw I had to install the Java extension pack. I'm also going to install, if I go into the extensions and I type CoPilot, I'm going to install the CoPilot and the CoPilot Chat. I think I'll do the release version for this because we're doing a demo. And you can see it automatically installed CoPilot Chat as well. So now if I go into my extensions and I look at installed ones, they are there. So that's kind of nice. They're already there and everything works. So if I go back, whoops, I closed the wrong thing. Hold on. Let's go back to the code. Hello world features. There we go. So I can still do inline. Look at that. Everything's there. This is a browser now. It's not a local IDE or anything. I can do explain. So you get the same capabilities that you get with the other one. And it works pretty well. You can see it made a much bigger explanation this time. That's what I meant about the capricious nature. So explain last time, just did a little 1-paragraph summary. Now it's talking much more detail about this. It feels like chatting more. So it's kind of a cool way to do this, and you can create this code space. And I can close this now. I can actually close this code space. Let's go ahead and do that. Well, just before I do it, I can actually open this in the editor as well. And this will open not a local clone of it, but the clone. And when I say open session in editor, it's going to open the clone on Visual Studio Code in this case that is using that containerized version. And if I save anything there or I make any edits to the code here, it will actually save my state in this code space at its current state. So if I just do something simple like Control-I, doc, it's going to document this. Let's see what it does. I didn't select anything, so let's see what it documents. Yeah, see, if you just say doc, it actually documents every class in there. So let's go ahead and accept that. Go down here, accept. All right. So now we have documentation here, and I've saved it. Now what I can do is I can just literally close this. And if I go back into my code spaces, it's going to tell me, I hope, that the code is there, local code spaces. It's saving the code space right now, so it's taking a second. It says opening. That's actually misleading. But there will be a code space here in a minute or two that I can go back in and open later, and it's going to save that state with the documented code. And if I ever want to use it, I have to, in fact, let's just be safe. Let's refresh this. Okay. Code spaces. There it is. Where's the one? There it is. Psychic Sniff. You know, it's got the same container names, these randomly generated names. Psychic Sniffle. Okay. So if I go back in here now, the code is there and it knows that I documented. And if over here, you can see I have one piece of code that I need to push back to my repo if I want to make this work. So everything's there, everything works, and it kind of saves the state for you, which is pretty awesome. All right. So that's code spaces support, just driving home the point that everything I just showed you on the IDE works in code spaces too, which is a pretty cool feature. I'm going to talk a little bit about Azure AI Services, and then I'm going to show you how you can set up an OpenAI service as well, because we actually have lots of time. So if anyone has any questions, just jump in as well. This is progressing along well, and I'm yeah. Feel free to jump in with questions about last time when we did the original broadcast. I don't think people heard my responses to some of the questions. People were asking about how you actually, what's your philosophy for, AI in the future and things like that. So I've sort of shared my explanations for who I think it's for in terms of senior and junior developers. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know, whether they're technical or just about AI in general. So Azure AI, ChatGPT really took over the AI landscape around March of this year. So, it really hasn't been around that long. And before that, for many years, Microsoft is developing other AI capabilities. So those are still there, and they're actually really, really useful as well. And the advantage of that, using these OpenAI capabilities and the AI capabilities, is that we have pre-made models for things. When you look at things like vision, so we have models, for example, pre-built that will, identify objects, identify animals, things like that. We also have objects pre-built that identify languages for speech. So speech and text translation. If anyone's never used the Bing, I know I work for Microsoft, but the Bing chat for translator, if you look up Bing Translator in the App Store, whether it's Play or the iPhone store, it's pretty amazing. And I'm not just saying that because I work for Microsoft. I've used competitors. This one, I have family members who are from Nicaragua, and I was just there, and we were conversing, and and my wife and I were conversing in English, and some other folks were conversing in Spanish. And I left the Bing Translator app on my phone sitting on the table. And what it does is it actually auto detects the languages around the table and translates them automatically to the other language. So it knew that people were speaking Spanish and English at the table. And if I spoke in English to my wife, it would translate it into Spanish, and the other folks could see that. And if they spoke in Spanish, it would translate that to English, and everybody who was speaking English could actually see the Spanish conversation as well. So it's pretty cool stuff, and I haven't really seen any tools that do that. Pretty cool stuff. But anyway, uses are the speech and language capabilities that we built up over years, and they're pretty impressive. So check that out. We also have decision services and Azure OpenAI service, of course, which is the base of AI, of OpenAI and ChatGPT, as everyone's familiar with it. So what do these things build? So that platform builds bot services, cognitive search, form recognizers, video indexers, metrics advisors, and immersive readers. So we actually go beyond what ChatGPT and OpenAI can do now, and we offer these other things that have been around for years. So check those out as well. It's a pretty cool structure. The other thing that we've added is Azure AI Studio. So if you're working with OpenAI, I'm going to show you this in a little bit, but if you're working with OpenAI and you want to build and train some local data, you want to keep it secure, but you want to have it included in searches when you look for data using a ChatGPT type interface. We have capabilities for that. Just a moment, I'm going to answer this question. So a gentleman here, speaking of translation, the Cyrillic alphabet, I'm not familiar with, so I won't try that name. But how long does CodeSpaces keep a virtual machine with changes if you close it? The answer to that is it keeps it. I think it's based on rules that your organization sets up. And in the case of our organization, it's 30 days. And it warns you. It tells you if there's no activity after 30 days, it tells you this CodeSpace is about to be deleted. So you can go in and you can, Sergey, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so Sergey, it's hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. you can go back in and you can open that code space and it'll be kept for another 30 days. But it's based on rules that your organization chooses for how long that code space will sit there. So hopefully that helps. All right. So the Azure AI Studio, once again, so you can build and train your own models. As I was saying, you can basically, you can have ChatGPT capabilities, but then you can add your own data to it. And you can have decisions being made about how that data is going to be interacted with, when you're going to call your local secure data, or when you're going to call ChatGPT, or when you're going to call a combination of that. And you can basically build and train your own models on that. You use OpenAI service and your own data, and there's vector indexing. So when you talk about modern AI, this is a fairly new thing as well. Vector indexing is a big deal. So people are basically using vector indexing to organize the parameters for their large language models. And that's how you do it locally. And then you can create your own retrieval modes, and you can create prompt flows. And it has the safety built in, as I mentioned before. So this is just covering your own data again. So you can have your own data sources. They can be databases, files, et cetera, and it creates that vector index for you that you can look at and pull that data in when you do your OpenAI search. Now let's talk about that. I'm going to show you an example of that, and then we'll get into all the other copilots we have at Microsoft, which they're growing at an unprecedented number. Okay, so let's go to the browser. So this is my code space. I'm just going to close it for now. And this is my, if you go to portal.azure.com, this is my version of a customized dashboard for Azure. And this is basically the application that I just showed you when it's deployed. It runs like Kubernetes, and it's got a couple of things there, but that's not why I want to show you this. What I've done is I created a related model to this called, if you go down here in my dashboard, you can see here, DevOps Ukraine, Azure OpenAI service. I just literally created this. Alona watched me create it just before the session. And basically inside of this OpenAI service, we've got this thing called the Azure AI Studio. And you can do all kinds of things with it. You can try chat. So I just created this model. It's still not working. Let's see. Hold on. Maybe it works. No, it's not going to let me go. So you can, for example, set up, it's not going to let me show you a demo, but I can show you everything else. It's asking me, I just literally created this. So if I created the deployment in the last 5 minutes, just wait a moment. It was more than 5 minutes ago, but that's okay. So we've got all these different writing assistants, Shakespeare writing assistants, IRS tax chatbot. These are all just default examples that you can use. These are things that we have internally, and you can set up your own. And this is where you add your own data. So you can add a data source, and you can select a data source, in this case, blob storage, and you can upload files. And this is going to create a vector index of the data for you so that you can actually search it individually. And this is kind of cool stuff. Let's see. Let's just save. Let's say. Okay, so this is working. Generate. So these are different prompts that have been engineered. Let's see if this works. Okay, so it is actually doing a chat. But let's say examples. This actually creates, yeah, so it's actually creating a something that you want to generate, and it's using the deployment that I just created. There you go. So this is an email that it created for me. Yeah, anyway, I don't, that's okay. What I want to do is I want to use DALL-E here, and I want to see if I can create, for example, I want to create a prompt here. Undo, let's not do that. let's do this. Create a prompt that uses the Java Duke logo and DevVox Ukraine DALL-E prompt. Uses the Java Duke logo and DevVox Ukraine website. Let's see what it does. Generate. If this doesn't work, I'll just go in and do a DALL-E prompt. Okay. 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 So I don't actually need this. I don't need this. I don't need the prompt in this format, but that's kind of cool. It does actually generate something you can use with the API, but we have DALL-E right here. So let's see what we got here. DALL-E. That's actually an API call. So it uses create an image that uses the Duke logo, generate. Let's see what we got here. This is kind of fun. And then that didn't work. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. So Java Duke logo. Let's just say this. So hopefully this works. This is why I always try and get a generated prompt for me, and that prompt didn't really work. So let me see if we can do this. A square t-shirt design with DevVox logo. Let's see this. Probably taking up too much time here. Hopefully you guys find this entertaining and informative. Let's see what we got. Okay, well, obviously needs some work, and it's the presenter at this point that needs help with the actual design. So, yeah, this is what happens. I just wanted to show this real quick before we get started. So that's kind of cool. And so I showed you bring your own data, the chat playground, the completions playground, and the DALL-E playground a little bit. But there's things you can work with here. You can play around with, and then you can, set up. That's what this completions playground is. When I showed you that, it actually generates an API call that you can use, and you can pass this using whatever language you want, including Java, to your chat. And for now, what I've got is I've got one deployment that I created. This is the one that we talked about. We've got one model, basically, and it covers all of these different GPT 3.5 models. I've got no data files because I didn't actually add any data files. And you can set up content filters as well, which is customized content filters to filter out anything basically that you want. I won't get into where or why, but should be self-evident for a lot of folks. The kind of filters you want to use based on corporate or government rules or your organizational rules, wherever you are. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about copilots, the other ones. We have Microsoft's 365 Copilot, our Dynamics, which is our Salesforce style CRM, Copilot Power Platform. So Power Platform is our low-code, no-code platform for that, and Security Copilot as well. And then we have, of course, GitHub Copilot, which is the one that I talked about today. Security Copilot is very cool. It's a great way to sort of interactively build some capabilities, even if you don't have the kinds of things you're looking for in terms of data and other things. So I did want to talk a little bit about the responsible AI journey. Microsoft takes AI and the responsibility of working with AI fairly and inclusively, very seriously. So there's been several articles. I mean, we're up here in 2022. The responsible AI standard started, but it actually started way back in 2016 when we have some AI principles in 2018 that were adopted officially. We also adopted some facial recognition principles. As you know, some faces are by AI can be harder to recognize than others. And that's no fault of the faces. That's the fault of the AI. We have to fix that and make sure it works well. So we had some facial recognition principles that are adopted there. And of course, the Office of Responsible AI was established way back in 2019 to work with our pre-OpenAI tools and technologies. And a few other things happened. But basically, we've got a responsible AI standard that was developed in 2022, and that covers privacy, inclusiveness, accountability, transparency, fairness, and reliability. You may have heard in the press recently that we're actually Microsoft's legal team is representing and supporting anyone who has any legal issues with using Microsoft's AI tools. So that's something that hopefully helps customers understand and feel more comfortable working with our AI tools. Here's the principles. We mentioned before the 2022 principles. I believe this is the latest one. AI must maximize efficiencies without destroying the dignity of people. It must guard against bias. It needs accountability so humans can do unintended harm. So humans can undo unintended harm, meaning if something does happen and gets through the cracks, that we actually are able to do something about it and fix it. It must be transparent and designed for intelligent privacy, and it has to be designed to assist humanity. So that's basically what's covered there. I've got some links here that I wanted to show you as well. You can go to microsoft.com/Java for everything Java at Microsoft. aka/GitHub Copilot will take you to the Copilot features that I showed you today. And then we have a Learn module. So Microsoft has several what we call learning paths that take you through different technologies. And we have one for AI. We also have Copilot Trust Center, which will explain more details about what we have for that. And we have data privacy principles and documentation for our cognitive services as well. So I believe that's all I had. We haven't had any questions, but I'm here for questions if anyone wants to ask any. I'll have a question. Sergey, did I get your name right? Is it Sergey or Sergey? Hopefully the second one. All right. Well, if no one else has any questions, I think we can wrap up. We're 10 minutes before the end of the broadcast. Thank you. Thank you, Sergey. Yeah, Alona, if you have any questions or if you want to relay anything, happy to answer them as well. So.
Yeah, we can wait in a few minutes. Maybe someone want to ask something. Actually, Brian, thank you for truly inspiring. And that was really, really interesting for all of us. And we see a lot of pluses in the chat. And actually, we have a question from Alexander, and you can read it here.
Yes, so I can show you how to start the Azure AI Studio. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go there. So this is my browser. I'm sorry. It's my browser, and I'm inside of Azure Portal. So if you have an account, you can go to portal.azure.com. If you don't, you can sign up there for free for a free trial. Basically from here, what you do is you have to create an OpenAI service, which I already did. So if I just type OpenAI, So OpenAI here, Azure OpenAI. I've got a bunch of services here. We don't want all of these. We just want my subscription. As you can see, I have too many to work with. GX events, be Benz, apply. There we go. So I can open up the DevOps OpenAI service. And you can see here, you can explore it. Basically, from here, you just go explore with the new Azure OpenAI Studio. So I go here. And that's where you get to the studio. So that's basically it. There's a couple ways to get there, actually. If you go here and you say model deployments, it also just tells you the model deployments have moved to OpenAI Studio. So if those of you who've never worked with this before, that's how you get to it. Or if you've actually worked with it, you'll find that you're going to be redirected to OpenAI Studio for a lot of things anyway. So you click on your deployments, and from there you've got your playground that you can work with here, including chat and other things. So. Hey, it's working now. Remember this gave me an error message before, so I can say, tell me about DevOps Ukraine. There we go. It's telling me all about Ukraine. It's been running since 2001. Did you know that? And it takes place in multiple locations worldwide. Oh, it's part of the DevOps local conference series. Let's see. When did when was the first? I'm asking it historical questions because I believe the data is updated until 2022 on the ChatGPT 3.5 that I have. ChatGPT 4 is a bit newer, and if you go to OpenAI, they have the capabilities of browsing web browse, the actual internet now, but that's not built into ChatGPT 3.5 or 4. That's a special feature of OpenAI. So anyway, so when was the first DevOps Ukraine? Let's see. Okay, there you go. It's held in November 18, 19, 2016 in Kyiv, Ukraine. Since then, the conference has been held annually. The most recent one, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's it. So it doesn't know about this one. It only knows the latest one. It says was 2020. So it got some of the information right. Once again, this is the kind of thing you have to be careful with when you're talking about AI. And then DALL-E, of course, we got the bad things, and then completions. It tells you how to create something that's going to be a prompt for sending to OpenAI API. All right, so hopefully that was useful for getting to the OpenAI Studio. And yeah, I take more questions if you have. I'll put it back to the links page.
And when we are reading all the questions, I would like to tell you, Brian, a huge thank you. Really, thank you for being our speaker, for being ready to share your knowledge, because it's really inspirable. So we are happy to see you. And it seems that like we don't have any additional questions. So maybe you want to add something for our participants.
Just want to say thanks. And Alona, thanks to you for having me, and thanks for DevOps Ukraine for having me. It's a great cause, and I believe you can still donate if you're looking to do so. What would be the link for that?
I would like actually to add a few words about it, Brian. Thank you again
Please.
for being
Thanks.
our friends. And we see in the chat thank yous from our participants, actually from Sergey. Yeah, and a few words about DevOps Ukraine conference. I would like to remind you that it's really has been organized as a charity event with the key goal of raising 50,000 euros for our defenders. And I'm delighted to share that actually together with our speakers, with our team, with our partner, with our participants, we managed to raise almost 55,000 euros. So really a big thank to each one of you for being with us and for your contribution to this goal. And actually, special gratitude from all Ukrainians to all our speaker and Brian for you as well. So thank you for being with us again. And actually, glory to Ukraine. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure. And